Salutations and hello, free thinkers, fellow rogues, and travelers from all stations. You've reached my transmission, a wash of static. Why a wash of static? Because ultimately when you break us down as individuals and a people and a civilization, that is what we all are, sending our signals into the nadir before we rejoin it. And with that in mind, welcome to here. I'm your host, Gerodius Thane. Today we're going to be delving into the subreddit Confidently Incorrect. We'll also go ahead and review Pearl Jam's 12th and latest studio album, Dark Matter. And just for good measure, we are also going to go ahead and throw in a review on the film Furiosa, a Mad Max saga. That being so said, grab your drinks. As always, I am a member of the Jack Zero Faith and Brotherhood, and let's make like the Beastie Boys and hit it! Today is June 17th, 2024, and it's almost the end of yet another Gemini season. Yes, I am a member of that dastardly group. Fun little fact, there was a time, quite a while back now, where I was a member of some dating sites. I won't even mention the names, but I felt the urge to go ahead and put down Gemini and male. Sorry. Because so many women profiles had absolutely, positively no Gemini men. No exceptions, no way. Our reputation precedes us. Confidently incorrect! And I will be the first to admit that part of me would like to say that I enjoy this subreddit because I like to teach and gently correct mistakes but I know the truth. I just like to laugh. Subsequently, and right now, let us just get right to it. So let's take a look at this one. Wait, a quarter past 3 isn't 3:25, but 25 is a quarter? Oh, babe. 3:15 isn't a quarter past 3, it would be 3:25. Oh. I can't tell if you're joking. I'm not. A quarter is 25. That's why a quarter is 25 cents. Well, it just wouldn't be confidently incorrect if it didn't have things like this. All right, fam, very briefly, and I do realize we have digital timepieces now where we're not necessarily needing to know what, the hands on the clock are on older timepieces, but an hour's got 60 minutes. 15 minutes is a quarter of that. 15 times 4 being 60. If you had a 100-minute hour, you would be absolutely, utterly correct. Just as you are correct in saying that $3.25 is 3 1/4. Absolutely right. But if you're relating to time, you are wrong. You don't have to eat less to get abs. Just eat less frequently. Huh. Nah, fam, you need to eat less food to lose weight. Nah, if you eat 1 meal a day that is 3,000 calories, you lose more weight than if you ate 3 meals a day and snacked, adding up to 2,000 calories. That's just simply not true. That is not how thermodynamics works. This is true. This is not how thermodynamics works. I hate to tell you, but the person trying to advise you to eat less food to lose weight is absolutely correct. There is never has been any mystery about this. We have known this for hundreds of years. Every weight loss concoction, every get fit fast thing is predicated on the idea of there's a mystery to be unlocked about weight loss, and it's just simply not true. In order to lose weight, your caloric intake has to be readjusted. So someone eating 3,000 calories in one meal is not going to lose as much weight as the person, like a who is like eating 2,000 calories spread out over time. How often you eat has nothing to do with it. What does have to do is, it's very much a matter of sum total equals overall result. 3,000 calories, and by the way, we do not know exactly how many calories are going to be necessary, the prerequisite for any one given human body. That varies from body to body. I'm a 200-pound male. I probably need somewhere around 2,000 calories or maybe a little bit above in order to be functioning normally. There are probably others that need a higher caloric intake due to preset conditions. But, however, if I were to go ahead and eat one huge meal, 3,000 calories, I would not expect to lose as much weight as if I had 1,500 to 2,000 calories spread out over time. I have a dispute over realism involving gayness in historical drama. This takes place in ancient Greece, right? The Greeks followed religious doctrine, so they would kill somebody for being gay. Therefore, this series, which prides itself in its historical realism, apart from characters having an impact, is going to add this. It's wrong. Laughing out loud, you think ancient Greece wasn't gay. I know ancient Greece followed Christianity. No, they did not follow Christianity, at least not right away. Ancient Greece was polytheistic, which means that they worshipped many gods. They eventually warped into Christianity over centuries, but they most certainly did not follow. It's like, oh, well, sounds like a good thing. Let's just go and follow this Jesus guy. They did not. Any depiction of homosexuality or bisexuality in ancient times, Greek or Roman, it's very likely to be more accurate than not. All right, I sense I'm already going to get pissed off on this one. Can you imagine a teenager standing up to the Nazi leadership? I'm all for holding people accountable, but she was an office clerk. Seems like a witch hunt at this point. Even more so when you know the Holocaust is a lie, and that they are only punishing old ladies because the truth is beginning to surface. Have to instill fear to keep the lie going. And I just bet you know all about instilling fear. Great. I have found a guy who desperately needs a face. The Holocaust happened. 6 million people died. It was the most atrocious act that we can ever think of in the 20th century. And I can already see what you're possibly thinking. It's like, well, Gerodius, you weren't there. How do you know? Well, in a way, I do. Because think about it. How did it ever benefit the Jew to go ahead and lie about what had happened in Auschwitz and Dachau? How did it ever benefit them? Who's ever gone out of their way to say, oh, let's go ahead and make reparations to this great and horrible harm we've done? It didn't work out that way. The Holocaust happened. It was a horrible atrocity. And the worst thing about it is that it happened over time and hardly anybody stood up as it was. I have to admit, few things get me more heated up than hearing anti-Holocaust rhetoric, like it didn't happen, neo-Nazi regimes in general, like anything like fascist, these things get my blood boiling pretty quickly. As to the question of whether the girl in question who was persecuted for Nazi crimes, who had simply been an office clerk, I often think about that. I really do. Where, just imagine, another sad aspect of the Holocaust happening was that it could not have happened without the long-standing complicity of people that otherwise had no direct involvement in it. You can just see them really, almost, if you picture hard enough. People wondering whether they should salute or during the parades. People who see people of Jewish descent being beaten, hurt, maybe even killed on the open streets, rounded off to parts unknown, and wondering whether they should address it, that nagging little feeling maybe, that they had about how wrong this is and ignoring it and going home to their family. It had to have happened so many times. It had to happen to so many people. That's why it kills me when I hear some doofus with some neo-Nazi little leanings going on in his head to talking about the Holocaust never happened. 6 million deaths can't be swept under the rug, and it can't be faked. It happened, and we have to live with that. Bracket 9 plus 9 bracket minus 2 isn't 18, by the way. Edit. Downvoters want to prove me wrong? Because they didn't say 18. They said 18 minus 2 is 16, which is correct. How about the first part that says bracket 9 plus 9 bracket minus 2 equals 18? Is that correct? Very big hint, people. No. You forgot the 2 at the end. That step is just resolving the brackets. It's almost like you think using the rules of algebra is illegal in this case. Hey! You seem utterly incapable of googling a basic addition problem and incapable of counting in your head and incapable of finding a calculator and insist on saying it's everyone else who's wrong about math, especially when it's not even a PEMDAS thing. It's just you not knowing even the bare minimum. I tried formatting a visual math problem by trying to get you to... You're a fucking moron with no math literacy. Oh, dear God. The answer is 16. It does not equal 18 in any way if you have the presence of the minus 2. This isn't even algebra. But these guys keep on going on it for 10 whole pages. I really do worry about humanity when I see people like you. It's worrying that you're allowed to vote and may even have kids to impart your wisdom on. Can you read what OP wrote? I did. Bracket 9 plus 9, bracket minus 2 equals 18 minus 2 equals 16. Come on, Einstein, teach me BODMAS. B-O-D-M-A-S. And guy goes on to the classic signs of I am defeated. Bitch ass, you ain't got to be fucking Einstein to follow along. Jesus Christ, you think I'm sad and you can't even follow a two-step math equation? Fuck off, loser, and you have less than no ground to stand on. Okay, so we've concluded. You think bracket 9 plus 9 bracket equals 2 is 18. Glad we're in agreement. You going to double down on that? Please don't. Please don't, OP. Please don't. I mean, I can say baseless poo like that too. Why do you seem to think 9 plus 9 equals 20? Can you read? Read where I quoted OP. I even highlighted it in bold for you because of your comprehension skills. Now read that part in bold again. And then again. Are we there yet? So you're brain dead then. You cannot randomly slice up math equations to present the new mangled half equation as what OP said, but go off on my reading comprehension when it's clearly your math literacy that needs work. I can't even begin. Most of those parties were in fact blurred out, so I mean, I actually have a rough time keeping track of who's OP and like who are the 1 or 2 responders. I believe it was 2, but it essentially works like this. Bracket 9 plus 9 bracket is simply 18. You take minus 2 on the outside of that, and that means that the overall answer of the equation is 16. Any other formulation that you use is incorrect. I know math has changed quite a bit since I was in high school, but trust me on this one. Math has not changed that much. It is still fundamentally pure and unflawed, and that equation in particular is 16. Well, after going through God knows how many ways to transmutate 16 into 18 and 18 into 20 and just basically get basic math so wrong. So let's have enough of confidently incorrect and let's just go ahead and go right into this review of Pearl Jam's album Dark Matter. Pearl Jam's Dark Matter. First, let's give some props, and that word is very much going to identify me as an old man, to this band. This is the 12th studio album offering from the group, although their discography really is comprised of more than 60 albums. For those of you who were alive in 1991, just observe for a moment how much the world has changed in only 33 years when Pearl Jam's debut album 10 came out. And then be in awe that a remnant of that time can still come up with an album that's so solid, it might, maybe just might, even be called the best work they've come up with in 18 to 20 years. I thought Pearl Jam's 10th studio album, Lightning Bolt, was so-so, kind of mired in like some things that they had established for a long time before. Their 11th album, Gigaton, had some bold experimentalism and actually had other band members taking on lead vocal duties. And I thought, oh, that is awesome. That is just simply awesome. But this 12th album, Dark Matter, is kind of almost a perfect compromise between the two. And the fact that they have been able to come up with it in a world that does not respect endurance whatsoever, they're almost a hallmark of endurance. First, let me go ahead and get a basic thing out of the way. If you are of the mind that Pearl Jam has not truly rocked, since maybe 10 or the days of Versus, this is probably not the album that's going to make you change your mind. This is an album that's comprised of artists in their mid to late 50s and early 60s, and they don't try to tell you anything different. Now, love them or hate them, Pearl Jam is, in essence, their own thing. The comparatives are almost useless. There's never been a rock band quite like this. There have been better. There certainly have been worse. But they and their approach are singular. Eddie Vedder himself as a vocalist. Now, allow me to go into my mixed thoughts about Eddie Vedder as a vocalist. He has never been a particularly gymnastic vocalist. He's a guy who has always relied on like soulful mumbling, for lack of a better term to put it. But in this album, he's going for crescendos and descendos and descendos. Really, that was good musical terms. He's going for crescendos. He's going for breaks. He's going like there's more of an approach as a pure vocalist to this than like I can remember in any other album. If there is a bona fide criticism that I could truly level at Dark Matter, it is that this is not Vedder's strongest lyrical work. It's generally a hallmark among Pearl Jam albums that you can always find one song that seems to have gotten the juiciest lyrical bits. Like on Versus, it would be like probably Leash or Elderly Woman Behind the Counter in a Small Town. Still my favorite title all time of Pearl Jam. But in here, you have, dare I say, almost hackneyed promised resistance to the current dark forces at hand, but like very little of definites, and certainly not quite the imagery that Eddie Vedder is used to giving us in an album. So it's kind of distinct in that way, in the sense that Vedder's vocals are less muddied than what they usually are, and as yet, he's not really saying anything that we really haven't heard before. The album Dark Matter starts with a track called Scared of Fear, which might be my favorite title track. You know, like it's like the only thing to be feared of, be afraid of is fear itself. I like it. It's a mid-tempo rocker and not quite as intense as Binaural's Breaker Fall, but it definitely sets a tone that this is going to be mid-tempo. This is going to be a bunch of middle-aged men who are going to rock out as hard as what they can. The set after the first track is when the really good stuff starts to happen. The second track, React Respond, is among the better tracks I think that they've done in a very long time. It's Vedder's vocals just soar. They just go ahead and take no prisoners, and then they go lead right into track number 3, Wreckage, which is almost certainly the most melancholy and probably the most sing-songable track of the entire album. I have no doubt that's probably going to be one of the singles on that album. Track number 4 is the title track, Dark Matter, which seems to throw everything but the kitchen sink at you, but in mid-tempo way. You might hear me say mid-tempo quite a bit in describing this album because that is an awful lot of the tracks do tend to be that way. It's like they have a purpose, they are trying to say something, but they are also keeping things in reserve. This is very much an album formulated by veteran rockers who have been together for a third of a century, in that they understand each other's weaknesses and strengths, and they will go ahead and just simply keep a lot in the tank because they're trying to make this a whole album worth listening. Track number 5 is called Won't Tell, and while lyrically I don't think much of it, it's classic Vedder mumblingisms, but the drumming and the guitar work all layered across the work just seem to just kind of just filter and just shimmer like during the whole song. And it's a treat. It's honestly one of my very favorite tracks on the whole album, the way that all the parts combine together. I can actually somewhat forgive Eddie Vedder for mumbling through about half of it, as I've forgiven Eddie Vedder many times before for doing the same thing on many different songs, on many different albums. Track number 6, Upper Hand, is very possibly the highlight of the entire album. There is just a somewhat of a camaraderie that you feel between all these musicians, and Pearl Jam employs a couple of different people beyond who we know as the quintet of Pearl Jam, who they consider full band members. Here, you feel like everyone makes a contribution on this song, and it probably qualifies as one of their best in a very long time. Again, I've said it before, this is probably among their strongest work in the last 18 to 20 years. Nowhere is it more emphasized than on the song Upper Hand. And I truly wish that I could go ahead and just play these songs for you, so that, unfortunately, I'm left with just my words to go ahead and try to describe exactly what I'm saying. But for obvious reasons, I can't go ahead and put these tracks on there so that you can understand what I'm trying to say or emphasize. Much of tracks 7 through 11 kind of gets swept in a kind of deliberate melancholy and a kind of, for lack of a better term, it's almost a resignation. These are not the people that came up with 10 and Versus, both of them just known for almost animal moments of sheer intensity. Dark Matter does not have that. It does not have the animalistic side. This is more of artists and brothers coming to terms with each other and themselves, and just simply, resigning is too strong of a word, more like just coming to terms with the world that they did indeed try to make an imprint on, and that they did try to change, and that they have had an effect on. But, but in the end, much of the same problems that they knew as younger men still remain, and in fact probably have gotten worse. And subsequently, this is their response to it. They're going to keep trying. They are going to keep enduring. I have no real doubt that Pearl Jam will come up with a couple, three, four, five. You could come up with any number of albums that they could come up with after this. And probably until they start shuffling off the mortal coil, they're going to be attempting to make a difference with their particular individualistic approach to music. On the whole, if I was going to use a 5-star system, 5 being high and 1 being low, I would give this a very solid 3.5 to 4 stars. Some songs on there are worth a full 5. In particular, tracks 2, 3, 4, and 6, which are React Respond, Wreckage, Dark Matter, and Upper Hand. These are the highlights of the album for me. But even if I were not a Pearl Jam fan, and I most certainly am, 33 years later, I still am. Even if I were not a Pearl Jam fan, I would consider this album very solid for me to acquire. And I think it's absolutely worth someone's time in order to listen to. As someone who, as a group that's endured as much as what they have within themselves and from the outside world, I think it's an eloquent testimony to what can still be accomplished when you aren't 25 anymore and you don't look at the world quite the same way anymore. Furiosa, a Mad Max saga. I saw this film on May 29th, my birthday, and was immediately impressed by the cinematography. It is nothing short of beautiful. This film was shot in various spots in Australia, breathtaking spots in Sydney and various other places. This film stars Anya Taylor-Joy as Imperator Furiosa in an origin story, and Chris Hemsworth as one of the warlords who Furiosa has to deal with, like a Dementus, it's an intriguing character for Hemsworth to play. Sorry, I'm being distracted by a cat. Immediate thoughts about this film. I had hoped to go ahead and watch Fury Road before I went ahead and did this review, just simply because it's been a few years since Fury Road came out. But I will rely on memory and other things to go ahead and compare the two. Which is kind of an odd thing to go ahead and do, because honestly they're probably not meant to be compared. They're entirely different animals. Fury Road is an out-and-out action film and probably deserves its platitudes as one of the best that's ever been made. Furiosa is an origin story in the strictest sense. It goes with actions that take place over years rather than 3 hard days, as Fury Road does, where all the action is jam-packed into one certain setting. Furiosa has Anya Taylor-Joy as the title character, who becomes Imperator Furiosa, and I have some thoughts on her performance. Taylor-Joy brings the death ray laser beam eyes as well as Charlize Theron does. The original Furiosa, Charlize Theron, had a deadened like a fury in her eyes throughout most of her performance. Where the two differ, however, is Taylor-Joy's Furiosa lacks the physicality of Charlize Theron. Charlize Theron is 5'10" and frankly looks like she can kick your ass without much effort. Anya Taylor-Joy doesn't quite bring that same kind of pure physicality to the role, but the intensity is certainly there, especially when she spends much of the film not saying a word. The story of Imperator Furiosa is a fascinating one. The story goes deep into the critical things that happen to this character at a young age and makes her the character that we come to know in Fury Road first. Without telling you anything about what happens in this story, because I absolutely hate reviews that do that, it's a fascinating portrayal by Anya Taylor-Joy. The movie also stars Chris Hemsworth in a role that's somewhat unusual for him. Hemsworth in general is not known for playing villains. He certainly has gotten into daffy facets of characters before, and that's what he does here as Dr. Dementus, or Dementus the Red, or his character goes through a lot of whimsical name changes, although he is primarily Dementus throughout the whole film. What I could mostly say about Hemsworth in this role is that while he has elements of goofiness, elements of menace, elements of physicality, elements of being evil or dark, he never really settles on any one of those elements throughout the entire movie. His character is myriad and just sporadic, basically as somewhat whimsical as the Joker, although not as brilliant in the timing of the whimsicalness as what the Joker is, I suppose. Hemsworth never really seems to make choices as far as how he's going to portray this character. Go ahead and make a very quick edit here. And on this point of Chris Hemsworth performance, what I mean to say, and I don't really get through it in the rest of the review, is that you don't really believe Chris Hemsworth as this diabolical bad guy who can't be beaten by the hero. That's the vital element of most villains, in that they have to seem somewhat unbeatable, or that they really have the hero's number some way, somehow. Hemsworth never really delivers that. And when I say that he doesn't really make choices in the role, what I mean to say is that he does have elements of this, that, and the other, but it's he never really combines any of them. And moreover, he never really has a scene that just defines his role as oh yeah, this is the big bad guy, all right. Even in the very end of the movie where he kills Furiosa's mentor, you don't really buy it. Not to say that Chris Hemsworth is a bad actor. I don't. I have seen him do some good acting in other roles, and ultimately I do think he's capable of this role, but he just has a bit of a scattered approach to it, and I think the film suffers for it. On the whole, as a movie, Furiosa is a fascinating origin story, but the primary structure that's leading to the origin of the character is a little ho-hum. Two warlords are fighting essentially over Furiosa, as she finds herself out of her element and has to rapidly join her element in order to survive. Ultimately, this movie is well worth your time simply because, as mentioned before, the cinematography is at times brilliant, always breathtaking, and the action sequences that Furiosa does provide are top-notch. I'm not certain exactly how much CGI was used on these, but I can tell you that the actions depicted in the film are enough to make you go, oh geez, they're gonna get hurt. You're worried about the stunt people and the actors that are portraying these characters doing these outrageous things. The most intense elements of Furiosa equal the same intense elements of Fury Road, and are just as physically demanding to watch. You can't take your eye off the screen as they're happening. I ultimately give this movie 4 stars out of 5, and with the cinematography being a full 5. While it's not a Mad Max story that you are probably used to, it is a Mad Max story that's worthy of the story overall. Well, peeps, that's about the end of A Wash of Static for this edition. I've decided that I've liked this episode so much that I decided I was going to go ahead and do a review of all Pearl Jam studio albums, and that's going to be coming out within a few days. Of course, I've only done the bare bones work on it, but here's the thumbnail for that. Oh, and also, while I'm pointing at things on the screen, SUBSCRIBE, I can spell. Please subscribe and maybe even give me a like if you like this content. As always, stay safe out there, be good, and remember, there are many people that consider your mind and my mind bought and paid for. Do anything you can and everything you can to prove them wrong. I'm Gerodius. This is A Wash of Static, signing off. A Wash of Static is a Red Ghost Media original. Copyright 2024. One haircut, one birthday, and one driver's license picture later.